Hi, welcome to Dream Retro. In this video, I'm going to be repairing and refurbishing this Super Nintendo, which from here on out I'm going to call a SNES. Now the intention here isn't to make a tutorial, I just thought it would be a bit of fun to fix up a SNES I bought and document the process that I went through to do it. So I got the SNES from eBay, and this is the listing for it. It cost just under £25, and the description simply reads, "No life signs when plugged in, maybe a simple fix, sold for spares, no returns." I've never taken apart a SNES before, so this was just a bit of fun to see if I could get it working and to see if I could get it into better condition. So we'll start just by testing it and having a look around. You can see if we plug it in and flip the switch, there's no red light, so as the eBay seller described, it's dead. Also, the top plastic is a bit discoloured and it seems there's a spring missing in the cartridge port cover. I'm going to try and fix all of these things by the end of the video, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so first we need to take it apart. Step 1, we've got 6 screws on the bottom of the SNES, and to get these out you're going to need one of these, which is a Gamebit Screwdriver bit. You'll find them just by searching Gamebit. If you find these online, they usually come in a pair. The smaller one is used for some other stuff, but for this we're just going to need the bigger one. Also, just for ease, I've added a link in the description to the ones of these that I bought. I would note it's helpful to have somewhere to keep your screws, to keep them separate. I did get a pillbox, which you might see in a shot later. So the SNES has a fuse inside, which essentially just protects the circuitry from drawing too much current. If you push too much current through a fuse, the wire inside will just melt. So if the fuse in the SNES is blown, then the system just won't turn on at all. I decided this was the best first place to check. When first looking at the bottom of the board, I noticed there was a lot of this orange sticky stuff on the bottom. I'm really not sure what this is, but I'm going to try and clean it off. I started out by trying with some isopropyl alcohol. This took a tiny bit off, but it didn't seem to do a whole lot, so I came back later with some baking soda. I essentially mixed this with a little bit of water and scrubbed it with a toothbrush, and this seemed to do a fairly good job at taking it off. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the fuse. To test if the fuse still works, we just need to know if we get a current going across it. The way I tested this was using a multimeter. I set it to measure resistance at a low value, then placed the probes on either side of the fuse and looked for a resistance. We can see here that the multimeter doesn't show a resistance value for this fuse, which means it's gone, so we're going to need to replace this. So this is the new fuse that I'm going to be soldering onto the board. This is a 1.5 amp Pico Fuse that I got in a pack of 5 on Amazon. I'll put the actual listing in the video description in case anybody needs it. Here I'm just doing the same test as I did with the fuse on the board with my multimeter, and you can see that we get a resistance, and therefore there's a connection across it and it is working. So now I'm just desoldering the old fuse and soldering the new one onto the board. You'll see here I use a solder sucker to take the old solder off. This is just so that I can put some fresh solder on there and hopefully it'll get a good connection. I started out just using the solder that was already on the board to get the fuse in place. This held it there so it was easier to then add some new solder. So now that the fuse has been replaced, I actually want to test that the board works. But before I do that, I'm just cleaning the pins of the cartridge port. I'm doing this by putting some isopropyl alcohol on a cartridge and then sort of plugging that in and pulling it off a few times. And now we try it. And it works. Considering this is the first time I've repaired something like this, it was actually amazing to see it work. Now that I know everything works, I'm going to come back and clean the board. I'm going to do this with some isopropyl alcohol. You can see from the state of this cotton board just how much dirt I pulled off of this board. So now turning my attention to the plastic parts, I'm going to disassemble everything and clean it all in the sink with some hot soapy water. I also whacked some alcohol in the power switch here just to make sure that it had a good connection. So here I'm doing something else that I've never done before, which is a process called retrobrighting. Retrobrighting is essentially bleaching the yellowed plastic to make it look more like its original colour. The way that I'm going to do that here is with some off-the-shelf cream peroxide that you would usually use for bleaching your hair. And what I'm going to do is basically cover the yellowed plastic in the cream peroxide, wrap it in cling film, and then put it out in the sun for a few hours. And we'll see how that goes. So these parts have been out for about 4 hours now, so I'm going to bring them back in and rinse off the peroxide. And we can see here that it's definitely made a difference to the colour of the plastic. So the last thing I need to do is replace the spring that keeps the cartridge port cover up. I looked around online and I couldn't find a replacement, so instead I took a spring from a spare pen, then I bent it into the correct shape using some pliers. This took a bit of work and it isn't perfect, but it seems to work well enough. Now I thought it would be fun to do a musical reassembly, so here that is, just try to ignore the really out of focus bits. And finally, here's the finished product. I'm massively proud of how this turned out. I was surprised I was even able to fix it, let alone get it looking this good. If I could change one thing, it seems that the retrobrighting process I used has given the plastic a bit of a streaky look. I'm a little sad about that, but I'll be keeping this for myself, so it should be fine. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this video. This was a lot of fun to shoot and put together, so I hope it was as fun to watch as it was to make. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.